Welcome to the Kingdom Culture Podcast that was created on purpose with a purpose to empower, uplift, and guide others to the center of God's perfect will. Kingdom Culture family, welcome back to the Kingdom Culture Podcast. I hope you guys are all having an amazing week. This week, I want to talk about something. How do we hear God when our lives are in chaos? How do we hear Him when life is loud and messy, right? Because sometimes in faith, the hardest thing isn't believing in God. It's believing that He wants to be close. It's believing that He wants to be, near us, not just one version of us, but all of us, right? Not just the church version, not just the put together one, but the tired, overwhelmed, messy, still figuring it out version of us. I used to think that knowing God was about doing things right, saying the right prayers, having the right words, feeling something big, finding out my perfect ministry. But lately, I'm learning that God, being personal, doesn't mean that our relationship is going to be perfect because we are not perfect. I am not perfect. I just learned that God is always present. My life, honestly, most days is loud. My thoughts are loud, my emotions are loud, my opinions are loud. And I had to question, like, how do I even hear God in all of that? How can I just still be in my life but hear Him through what's going on? And here's the truth: God doesn't shout over chaos. God does not shout over chaos. He waits. He waits for me underneath all of it. When I'm crashing out, He's patiently waiting for me to be like, okay, cool. What's next? And it was really freeing. There was this verse that he brought to me, and I'm going to share it, which is in Psalms 46:10, and it says, "Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God." It doesn't say figure it out. It doesn't say try harder. It just says be still. Because intimacy with God doesn't need to feel like you're getting more information. It doesn't need to feel like another task. It just has to start feeling like um, you start to recognize Him. You start to get familiar with who He is. You start to recognize His peace, His gentle nudges, that quiet sense of like, this is safe for you, or no, this isn't for you. And this started happening for me, not because my life got quieter, because I'm learning to pay attention. I'm learning to decipher kind of through my spiritual lenses that God does speak. We just have to be still and like be able to, figure it out. Because most of the time in my faith walk, right, I felt like I needed to perform in some ways. And that was a hard truth for me to swallow because I'm like, I'm not performing. There's no way. Like that, I don't care to perform for anybody. Um, but my prayers sometimes felt like that. I needed to be more honest with myself and Him, right? And so now prayer looks like random things. I could be walking, I could be in the car. It's words sometimes. Sometimes I don't say anything. Sometimes I'm crying and that's it. Um, because it's not about forcing anything either. It's about your own self awareness. What brings peace instead of pressure, what draws you closer to, love instead of fear, um, those things. Because God doesn't usually speak through panic, He speaks through our alignment and peace and calmness, right? And this is the biggest thing that I learned. Like, I was self shaming. I was saying, like, you're doing this wrong. Why can't you get this right? But God's voice isn't harsh. He will correct you, but not in the way that we think He might, right? His voice is not condemning. His voice doesn't tell me, like, yep, you're right. You're a lost cause. That was just my own perception of what I thought the Lord was telling me, and it was a lie. Um, because even when He corrected me, it felt safe, right? The hardest part for me was staying in the quiet seasons of like when I wasn't feeling and I wasn't, in chaos, when it was feeling empty. I felt like something was wrong and that God had left me, but um it was just me not having to deal with all of the chaos and craziness that my life just was before. It was uncomfortable, but it felt right. And that's when I started to hear him. And so, if you've been wondering lately if God is near you, if he sees you, if he still speaks, he does. He's not waiting for you to get it right. He's not waiting for you to clean yourself up. He's just waiting for you to draw near him. Because even in the middle of the chaos, God isn't distant, right? So, here are the four things that I started to do to help me with this, and I hope that they help you. The first one is redefine prayer, because prayer is not performance, like I said, it's presence. Sometimes prayer is just you sitting and waiting to listen for him. Sometimes prayer is just you explaining how you feel. Maybe it's just, two sentences, but it's just you entering into his presence and saying, like, God, I want to hear you. I want to be near you. Let's spend time together. And that's what prayer is. It doesn't have to be this perfect, like, you on your knees, eyes closed, like this. Because God knows you. God knows who you are. And as long as you're talking to him, you'll feel his presence. Number two is that I started to practice my awareness, not my effort, right? So I didn't have to try harder to hear God. I had to be more attentive. I had to pay attention to what brought me peace. I had to pay attention to what was building the resistance and what was drawing me closer to chaos and not God, right? Um, and that was a big thing. So in your life, try to stop and see and listen in what moments you had those big emotions, what made you feel like that, and what is causing you to do all these things. And once you're aware, those are the things that you're going to bring to the Lord and surrender, right? um Number three is to be okay with God's gentle communication. That was a hard thing for me to realize, that God wasn't going to judge me, to say, you're right, you're never going to get it right. um because God's voice is not frantic. It's not shaming. God's voice leads, pushes you to something better, and he invites you to change. He doesn't demand anything, right? Correction feels safe in his presence. And that was really hard for me, because I think growing up, I kind of pushed myself to do things or change through harshness, and learning that that's not the way to do it now has been a lot of change in my mind, the way that I speak to myself, the way that I speak to others when I'm trying to correct them. So be okay with gentle communication. That was amazing for me. And the fourth thing is, stay in when it feels empty. What I mean by that is, like, spiritual intimacy deepens in consistency, not sensation. Some seasons are quiet, not because God left, but because he's teaching you to trust without feeling. Silence is not absence, it's often an invitation into maturity, because God is personal. He wants you to kind of be okay with silencing everything else out. Um, and then he'll step in and guide you and hear you and be with you, right? God God wants to know you in every season, not just one moment, right? It's about a relationship that forms over time. You learn that God is a friend. God is near, he sees you, he speaks whether you want to hear him or not, and he's waiting for you to just draw near, right? God is so personal, and I hope that this helps you to realize that, God is just like your best friend. It's funny because for the longest time, I just thought that people needed to be my anchor. And then I came to Christ and I realized that, like, me and him can have these very deep, open conversations, and I don't have to feel shame or anything else, because it'll stay between me and him, and then he will give me what I need to continue on, right? So for 2026, that's my prayer for you, to seek the Lord more. That's what I'm going to be personally doing, is just wanting more of him, and realizing that I'm not perfect. Nothing has to be perfect for him to come and show up and bless it. And it's going to be amazing. With him by my side, I know I cannot fail. So anyways, I hope that this was a blessing to you. If you feel like you have somebody that needs to hear it, please share it along. And don't forget that I love you, but that the Lord loves you more. Always, always, always. We'll see you guys next week.